Hello, friends. I'm glad you're here today. You know, it's Labor Day weekend here in the United States. The first Monday in September every year is Labor Day, and a lot of us get the day off work, which is kind of funny because Labor Day it started in 1894. I looked this up, and it's the celebration. It's made to honor the American labor force and the contributions that they have made to the fabric of our society. And I think it's just kind of ironic that we give everybody the day off. We give a lot of people the day off in a day that we celebrate work and labor. It's almost like Labor Day should be the day where we all work an extra shift or something like that. And so I think that's really interesting. And I've been thinking about it a lot because I've shared that I recently went back to work after an extended period of time as a graduate student and being unemployed. I got a job recently, and so I've been back in the workforce, and I've been going to work every day. And I've just been thinking about this because I'm realizing that I was very rested the last couple of years when I didn't have to get up and go to work every day. And I was doing school, and I had responsibilities, of course, but I've really been thinking in these last few weeks, and as I get up early in the morning and that alarm clock wakes me up, and I roll, like last night we rolled in after dark because Becca and I had things going on, and we carpooled together, and there was just a lot going on. And so it's been on my mind, this tension between work and rest. And here on Labor Day weekend, I thought it was a good time to explore that. And so I a couple questions come to mind. One, have you ever introduced yourself to somebody or met someone for the first time and be like, hey, what do you do to rest? We don't ask people that, do we? Most of the time when we introduce people, we say, what do you do? What do you do? So the first thing I've been thinking about is just that we often define ourselves. We find our identity in what we do. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but it's a part of who we are. For many of us who have a job for a living, or we identify as parents, or it's this thing that takes up our time and our energy, and it's what we put ourselves into, our work, that often defines what we do. And yet, the Bible has a lot to say about rest. It has a lot to say about our souls and where we find our identity. And so I wanted to share a passage with you today from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 11. I'm going to be reading from verses 28 through 30. Come to me, all you that are weary and are carrying heavy burdens. Some translations say labor. And I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Easy and light. This is Jesus speaking and saying, this is what it means to come to me. My yoke is easy and my burden is light. And so my question for you today is, do you feel easy and light? I can honestly say for myself that in the past few weeks, past few months, past year and a half, I don't know that I would describe myself as feeling easy and light. Or maybe you don't know it, you don't know. What would the people around you who know you best say about you? How would they describe you? I think it's really important to note that in this text, Jesus uses the word rest twice. And both times that he uses it, it's accompanied by a command. So in verse 28, he says, come to me, all you that are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. I will give you rest is the promise from Jesus. The command is to come to me. It's saying, come to me, and I will give you rest. Have you ever had a long day and you come home and you just need to chill, you need to relax, you need to rest? What do you do when it's time for you to rest? Think about that for a second. For some of us, it's probably a healthy activity. Maybe you sleep. That's a good way to rest. Maybe you read a book. Maybe you go on a walk. I mean, that's some physical exercise, but maybe it gives you a sense of rest to do that. I'm sure that for some of you watching, that the thing that you go to when it's time to rest is not healthy. There are things in our life, vices in our lives, that when we think about it, that's what we turn to when we need to rest. And it's an unhealthy form of rest. But Jesus says here in Matthew 11, come to me. He wants to be the source of rest. And we can't miss out on the context here, right? Because this is first century Israel in a a culture where Jesus is speaking to Jews who are under the heavy burdens of the Mosaic law, right? They have all of these rules that they are told that they have to follow. They're striving to follow these rules. Not only that, it gets more complicated by the fact that they are living under Roman rule, and so they have to play by the rules of Rome. Complicated again by the fact that many of the Jewish leaders at this time were either completely missing the point or they were doing bad things. They were twisting things. They were trying to be powerful. They were corrupt. And in the midst of all of this, Jesus is speaking to these people and he says, "Come to me and I will give you rest." All this weight you feel, the burdens of the laws and the society and everything, I will give you rest. He's offering them something new. He's offering them a new kind of rest. But he says that they have to trust him. They have to turn to him. So that's command number 1. And in verse 29, the next verse, he expounds on how you get that rest. So he says, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." Hold on to that for a moment. We're going to come back to that. "For I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy and my burden is light." He says, you will find rest for your souls. Jesus is not just talking about physical rest. I'm worn out, I'm tired, my body needs to rest. He's talking about something deeper than that, rest for our soul. So when I say the word soul, what do you think about? How would you define soul? I've been a Christian my whole life, and I realized I'm not sure that I know how to define my soul. I found this quote from Dallas Willard in a book called Renovation of the Heart, and he says, "Our soul is like a stream of water, which gives strength, direction, and harmony to every other area of our life. When that stream is as it should be, we are constantly refreshed and exuberant in all we do." So our souls are the essence of who we are. They're that deep, central core part of who we are. So when Jesus says he wants to provide rest for our souls, it's not this surface level physical rest. It's something deeper than that. He wants to provide some sort of rest that I think can transform our lives. It can impact everything about every area of our life, Dallas Willard says. And that's the kind of rest that I think that our souls are designed for, right? I mean, King David got this. Look at Psalm 62. He says, "Truly, my soul finds rest in God." Or Psalm 23, we know that one. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul." Our souls and rest go hand in hand. And I don't know about you, but I need that kind of rest in my life. I need that kind of rest for my soul. And the reality is, most days, I go through my entire day, I go and I go and I go, and I never even think. The thought of my soul doesn't ever even cross my mind. It's just not something that I think about. But you know when I do think about my soul? Is when I start to rest. So I don't know why, but we've lived down the street, our neighborhood, when we leave, right at the exit of our neighborhood, there's this big field, this farmer's field. And 2 or 3 times a year, they cut down all the grass and they make hay bales. And I don't know why, but I love the hay bales. And so a couple of days ago, I was coming home from work and I noticed that the tall grass had been cut, which I knew that means they're going to be making. I actually watch YouTube videos about people baling hay, and it's like so peaceful to me. I can watch like a 30-minute YouTube video of just a farmer baling hay. I know that's totally nerdy, but last night, like I said, we had a really long day. Becca and I carpooled, and as we came around the corner, she said, "Look," and in the dark, I could see the round hay bale. So this morning, the first thing, we got up, we made our coffee, and we walked to the front of our neighborhood, and we went out to the edge of that field, and we just stared at those hay bales. I had my phone, I took some pictures. And as I stood there and looked at those hay bales, I just took a deep breath. And I don't know that I was actively thinking about my soul this morning, but that moment was just, it's been a long week, there's been a lot going on, and here I am, this thing that I love, and I don't really know why, and I can't really add it, I don't have a reason, I can't add it all up in my brain, but in that moment I felt that soul rest. And I think we're designed for that. And I'm not saying that work is bad. I mean, the Bible says things about work too, right? Like work is a good thing. Does anybody else love a great to-do list, right? Like I love checking things off a to-do list and getting work done. And I think that that's good. We can find value in work and who we are and the things that we bring to the table for our companies that we work for, the families that we care for, just the teams that we're a part of. That's awesome. But sometimes I think we get so focused on that we forget about rest. We forget about our souls. And I think sometimes our soul is just saying, hey, don't forget about me. You need to take care of me too, right? But there's another voice. At least there's another voice in my head. And I think that you hear it too. It's that one that says you are defined. Your identity is in what you do and how productive you are and how successful you are and how many followers you have. All of these things, that is what defines you. That is where your value is found in what you can do and who you are. But I'm just telling you, that is not your soul speaking. And it's certainly not what Jesus has to say about us. More than likely, that's the culture that we are in, the culture of consumerism and capitalism, right? But there's a big difference between enjoying your work and enjoying what you do and letting it define you and become your identity. Because when we allow that to happen, we're not leaving any room for our soul to find rest and for our soul to be that source of life, right? We can look at a couple other places right here in the Gospel of Matthew where Jesus talks about this. In Matthew 16, he says, "What will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul?" And then in verse 22, when he asks about what is the most important thing, his answer is, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and with all your mind. And so I have to ask myself, do I love work so much that I'm willing to withhold rest for my soul? Well, what I think that really means is when we understand what Jesus is saying here, is do I love work more than I love Jesus? If I have to be honest with you, there are days where if you just look at the patterns of my life and the rhythms of my life, yeah, I would have to confess that there are days when I do love work and love myself more than I love Jesus. But if our souls are truly the core of who we are, and Jesus has designed our souls to find rest in Him, then what does it look like to consider that? What does it look like on a Labor Day weekend for us to, instead of just celebrating labor, to celebrate how God has designed us and to celebrate our souls? What does it look like, as these verses say, to live easy and light? What does it look like to live easy and light? How do we do that? How do we find rest for our souls? So let's go back. I told you to hold on to verse 29. "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy. My burden is light." What does that mean to take on the yoke of Christ? Dallas Willard, who I mentioned earlier, says it's simply to live the way Jesus lived, to follow His lead and to live that way, right? I actually love, there's a paraphrase of the Bible from Eugene Peterson called The Message, and I love the way that he writes these verses. Listen to this. "Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it," Jesus says. "Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me, and you'll learn to live freely and lightly." When you think of a yoke, right, the most common image that comes to mind for me is where two animals are yoked together. They bear the weight of this burden together. And Jesus says, "Come to me. I'll show you the way. You're not on your own anymore. We are yoked in this together." He's not promising that life will be perfect. Notice that. It doesn't say that anywhere. Jesus doesn't say, hey, everything's going to be peachy keen, right? But He does say that He's going to be there with us. Pastor Judah Smith says, "Rest is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of Jesus." And don't miss this, it's kind of implicit in this text, but I think it's right there, that you cannot take on the yoke of Jesus without taking off your yoke, whatever that burdens you right now. Or maybe you can't take on the yoke of Jesus without also allowing Him to take on your yoke. for him to bear the weight of your burdens. We take on his, which is easy and light, but he takes on ours. We believe that Jesus took on our sin and shame when he was nailed to the cross, right? But that's not the end of Jesus taking on things for us. In 1 Peter 5:7, it says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. Yes, Jesus cares about our sin, but he also cares about so much more. He cares about our sadness, our fear, that anxiety and stress. He cares about our depression. He cares about the things that are weighing on us, the burdens that we carry. And he says to us right here, words of Jesus himself, come to me. Trust me. I will give you rest. I think he's inviting us to take on his easy and light burden because he wants to take on ours that is often so heavy. And so we find rest for our souls by surrendering to Jesus. We find rest for our souls. We learn to live easy and light by surrendering everything to Jesus. It's impossible to do that if our identity is completely wrapped up in our work. What happens is that our identity has to be completely wrapped up in Jesus, in who he is, and who he says we are. So I want to leave you with two quotes today. There's a book that I read called Sacred Rhythms by a woman named Ruth Haley Barton. And it was a transformational book for me to learn about rest and soul and finding rhythms of rest in my life. And that's really what we have to do. If we truly want to, if you want to break the hold that work and identifying yourself with labor and work and all these, if you want to break that hold and you want to trust Jesus, it's going to take a little bit of work. It's going to take some time and some energy. You're going to have to choose when you come home at the end of the day, not to just stare at your phone or stare at a screen or turn to the things that are really not giving you rest, but you have to choose to let Jesus in, to go to him, to trust him. That's what it takes. And this is what Ruth Haley Barton says, what an amazing thing it would be to have the rhythms of your life regularly usher you into such deep trust that you could actually rest from it all. She also says the point of the Sabbath is to honor our need for a sane rhythm of work and rest. It is to honor the body's need for rest, the spirit's need for replenishment, and the soul's need to delight itself in God for God's own sake. Yes, we need to develop in our lives sane rhythms of work and rest. And I think the only way we can do that is through Jesus. He says, come to me. My yoke is easy. My burden is light. If we trust him, if we go to him, if we give him our burdens, he will in exchange give us an easiness and a lightness and a rest for our souls. Thanks for watching this video today. I hope it was a blessing for you. If you'd like to see more videos like this where I teach the Bible, you can click on this playlist right here. You can also find me at timwildsmith.com.